New York's skies turned blood red the night the ground cracked open. The Avengers didn't fight it, they unleashed it. A creature not born of metal or machine, but raw, ancient fear. Iron Man is the only one who saw its eyes and lived. But what he brought back might doom us all. The tremors started on a quiet Tuesday. Birds swarmed Manhattan's sky at dawn, screeching in spirals no scientist could explain. Stark Tower's AI registered seismic activity, but nothing matched the Earth's tectonic patterns. It was something else, something deeper. Tony Stark, ever the insomniac, was already hunched over his console. Maps flickered across his holograms. Fault lines that didn't exist yesterday were now glowing red beneath Midtown. Jarvis ran 38 models. None made sense. Then the voices started. Not through speakers, not through radio, but in Tony's head. A low, humming static, not words, but emotions. Dread, hunger, memory. It was as if the Earth itself remembered something and wanted it out. Tony dismissed it. Probably just sleep deprivation and too much whiskey, he muttered. But the nightmares came anyway. The next morning, the Avengers were gathered, not for a mission, not for a threat, but because Thor claimed he heard screams from the ground beneath the tower. Literal screams. He said even Mjolnir trembled. Doctor Strange arrived uninvited. Something buried, ancient, not magic. Worse, he whispered, pulling from his cloak a scroll he swore was hidden in Kamartaj's forbidden archives. It showed a being, no armor, no eyes, just a shape with skin peeling into tendrils, bones that moved like liquid, mouths that changed position. It wasn't a weapon. It was a warning. Stark traced the seismic epicenter directly beneath the foundation of his tower. 2 miles deep. The Avengers geared up. Natasha raised an eyebrow. What are we even fighting? Steve clenched his shield. We'll know when we see it. But they weren't ready. Descending in a specialized drill pod designed by Stark, the team breached the underground layer. What they saw wasn't stone. It was flesh. The walls pulsated like muscle, lined with veins glowing a sickly green. This isn't a cave, Bruce whispered, running his scanner. It's alive. Suddenly, the pod powered down. Darkness swallowed them. One by one they saw things. Natasha saw her younger self, the girl from the Red Room, crying. Steve saw Bucky not as the Winter Soldier, but screaming in chains. Stark saw his parents, their faces melting, blaming him. Only Thor seemed immune. He raised Mjolnir and struck the wall. A sound exploded across their skulls, not heard, but felt. And then it opened. A chamber unlike anything seen before. Organic pillars, glistening membranes, floating sacks of luminescent gel, and in the center, a cocoon. But it wasn't sleeping. It was listening. When Stark approached, his arc reactor pulsed violently. He collapsed, whispering. It's calling itself. Varnix. Bruce knelt beside him. That name, it's in the scroll. Thor looked uneasy. In Asgardian myth, Varnix is not a being, it's a sickness. A devourer of stars. Suddenly, the cocoon cracked. A long, thin arm tore through, covered in writhing pores that blinked like eyes. It wasn't metal. It wasn't armor. It was skin, wet and glistening. The temperature dropped. Steve's shield froze over. Natasha's gun jammed. It stood, tall, hunched, inhuman. No face. No eyes. Just holes. And when it moved, the ground wailed. Tony backed away, but it turned toward him. No mouth. But he heard it in his mind. You are the key. Then everything went white. Tony woke up in the tower's medbay 3 hours later. The others were out cold. But Doctor Strange was missing. Thor refused to speak. Steve said only one word, run. But Tony didn't. He went back down. Alone. He needed answers. Not from the Avengers, but from the thing. When he reached the chamber, it was gone. Only claw marks remained. And the whisper returned. You open the seal. Now I remember. Tony Stark hadn't slept since the whisper came back. You open the seal. Now I remember. The words weren't just echoes in his mind. They were pulses in his bones. He could feel them every time his arc reactor blinked. Like a heartbeat that didn't belong to him anymore. He stood alone in the lab. hands shaking as he reviewed the footage from the underground breach. Frame by frame, second by second. Something was wrong. In the feed, just before the cocoon cracked, Dr. Strange made a gesture with his fingers, not for defense, but as if he was inviting it. Then the camera glitched. Gone. No Strange. No signal. No alien. Tony clenched his fists. "You knew something," he whispered. Behind him, Friday's voice cracked through the speakers. "Sir, there's something strange happening in the lower hangar." He rushed down. The lights were flickering, not electrically. Biologically. They pulsed like veins under skin. And the air, it didn't smell like oil or plasma. It smelled like rot. And then he saw it, painted in blood across the wall. I remember the sky. Tony scanned the area. Nothing. No heat signatures. No life signs. But the whisper came again. "Tony." He spun around, repulsors armed. Nothing. Then a blink. Not his own. A large, vertical slit opened in the hangar wall. Not mechanical, not a door. A wound. Inside, an eye not spherical, not even complete. Just layers of iris floating in muscle blinked at him. It saw him. And then it smiled. 2 hours later, the Avengers regrouped in the emergency war room. Except Strange, still missing. Natasha paced, running her fingers along the hilts of her daggers. "We're being hunted inside our own tower." Bruce, eyes sunken, muttered, "It's evolving. It's not just alive, it's learning." Steve shook his head. "We brought something back. Not just a creature, a memory. A god that forgot it was a god. Until now." Thor slammed his fist down. "This is no god." Bruce looked up, voice hoarse. "It's worse. It's a reflection. A reverse life form. It remembers the lives it consumed, and uses their memories to build itself." Tony gritted his teeth. "So, it remembers us." Wanda arrived late, eyes red, trembling. "I saw Pietro last night," she whispered. Steve stood. "Your brother?" She nodded. "But he was wrong. Skin too smooth." Voice echoing backward. He said, "We danced in your blood, sister." Silence. Bruce looked down. "It's projecting. Making us see what breaks us." Later that night, Stark locked himself in the lab. He wasn't building a suit. He was building a trap. A neural cage that could isolate brainwave frequencies and force whatever this thing was into a feedback loop. But then the power surged. Everything went dark. Not just the tower, all of Manhattan. Across the skyline, every screen lit up. Not with warnings. With faces. Familiar ones. Nick Fury. Maria Hill. Pepper Potts. Peter Parker. All flickering. All melting. Each said the same thing. "Tony, come home. It remembers you." At the edge of the Hudson, a ship rose. Not from the sea. From under the city. It wasn't metal. It was bone. Wrapped in layers of skin, with teeth for engines and veins for wiring. It floated in the air, leaking black liquid into the sky. And inside something moved. Something breathing. It had grown. The Avengers prepared for confrontation. Sam flew recon and returned pale. It's not just the ship. The sewers. The subways. The old bunkers. They're all pulsing. "Like veins," Bruce said. "It's using the city as a body." Suddenly, a breach. Alarms blared. The tower walls bled. Literally, thick, translucent fluid poured from vents. Natasha slipped, screamed, but it wasn't pain. She looked at her hands. They were aging. Rapidly. Then regressing. Then repeating. She cried out, "It's controlling time." Thor dragged her out, Mjolnir crackling. Wanda sealed the breach with a hex. Stark stared at the wall. It didn't stop bleeding. Hours later, Wanda and Tony entered the sanctum, Strange's last known location. The eye of Agamotto lay shattered on the floor. The mirror dimension pulsed, but broken. Inside they saw him. Dr. Strange, or what was left of him, floated mid-air, his body twisted in impossible geometry, face stretched across dimensions. He whispered, "It's not a creature. It's a collection." Wanda stepped forward. Of what? He wept. Of every world that forgot it. Of every soul that buried it. We were its grave. Tony stepped closer. But we opened it. Strange had twisted unnaturally, and now it wears us. As they left the sanctum, the tower groaned. Not like metal, like something breathing. Wanda grabbed Tony's arm. "Did you hear that?" Tony nodded. From the vents, through the walls, and from deep within his mind, the whisper returned. "You gave me a name. Now give me your face." The armor felt heavier. Tony Stark stood silently in the center of his lab, fully suited up, but unmoving. The HUD was blank. No data. No power readings. Just one phrase, blinking red, across the screen. "You are not alone." He whispered, "Friday Diagnostics, now." No response. Just a low growl, not electronic, something, wet slithering. He tore off the helmet. No air pressure release. Just dripping. His face was covered in sweat. No, not sweat. Slime. He stumbled back, heart hammering, stumbling into the wall where blueprints once hung. But they were gone, replaced by drawings, crude, childlike scribbles of him. But not the man. The suit. And inside the suit something else. He spun to the console, hands trembling. He activated an emergency neural scan. The interface lit up in red. One glowing shape in his brainstem. A foreign signature. Something was living in his nervous system. Meanwhile, across the city, the ship had begun expanding. Not upward, but downward. Into the soil, through the concrete, infecting the ground beneath New York like roots. Flesh roots. Arteries. Strangers walking the street began to pause mid-step. Eyes rolled back. Smiles frozen. And they spoke in unison. The sky bled once. Now it breathes. Chaos erupted. At the tower, Bruce, Steve, and Sam gathered near the medical bay, where Natasha lay unconscious. Her vitals flickered like static, not flatlining, but stuttering between pulses like she was reliving her own death over and over. Bruce leaned in. "It's messing with time in her bloodstream. I think it's rewinding parts of her from inside." Steve looked down, frowning. "And Tony?" Bruce shook his head, locked himself in. "Won't talk. But I think it's inside him." Inside the sealed armor bay, Tony sat cross-legged, armor off. He stared at the arc reactor on the table. It was throbbing. It shouldn't be. A reactor doesn't have a pulse. But this one did. He gritted his teeth. "I designed you. I made every cell, every microframe. You don't get to hijack me." The whisper came, deep and cold. "You didn't make me. You woke me." Suddenly, the arc reactor exploded in a burst of light, and a form emerged from the fragments. Humanoid. Not mechanical. Not alien in the usual sense. This was organ tech. Bones shaped like armor plates. Skin stretched over carbon fiber ribs. No eyes. No mouth. Just a crown of pulsating nerve endings, forming a face that looked almost like Tony's. It moved closer, mirroring his steps, sinking with him. "You made a suit to protect yourself," it said. "But what if the suit made you?" Thor and Wanda stood atop the tower, watching the alien ship expand. Thor gripped Mjolnir tightly. "This creature has no realm, no myth. Even in Asgard, we don't speak of this." Wanda's eyes were glowing red. "It's not a creature. It's a mirror." Thor raised an eyebrow. "A mirror." She nodded. "It reflects our fears, and then wears them." Below, Bruce managed to unlock Tony's door using manual override. He burst in and stopped cold. Tony was levitating. Not flying. Floating, arms outstretched, eyes pure white. His veins glowed beneath his skin, tracing patterns like circuitry. Behind him, the mimic, the alien clone, moved in tandem. Bruce raised the scanner. "Your brainwave patterns?" "Tony, they're syncing with something. You're becoming a node." Tony's voice layered with a second tone, alien and ancient. "We thought the suit was protection, but it was an invitation." Then he dropped, coughing violently. Blood at the floor, black, oily moving. Bruce stepped back. "What is that?" Tony wiped his mouth. "I don't know, but it wants out." Sam and Steve watched the news on the tower screen. Every channel hijacked. Every face replaced. Newscasters smiled eerily as their jaws dislocated. And in perfect unison, they whispered, We are returning. Through you. Through your pain. Suddenly, Natasha screamed in the medbay. Her body arched, eyes flickering, and her voice boomed. Tony Stark showed me the way. Then she collapsed. Heartbeat gone. Wanda rushed in and placed her hands on Natasha's chest. Her magic pulsed. For a moment, Natasha opened her eyes, and she whispered, "Tell him he's next." In the lab, Tony frantically worked. He injected himself with a neural disruptor. Twice. Blood sprayed. He screamed, but the whisper faded. Temporarily. He opened a private channel to the others. "It's trying to make me the host. I think it's using the arc reactor as a beacon." Bruce nodded. "You need to shut it down. All of it." Tony looked down at the melted remains of his armor. "No. I need to burn it all." That night, Tony disappeared. No one saw him leave. But across the city, the ship pulsed, then roared, and in its echo, a voice. "The Iron God walks, and he is ours." The ship wasn't in the sky anymore. It was the sky. Its surface stretched like skin across the skyline, blotting out the sun. Blood-red clouds swirled around its ribs. Lightning pulsed in time with its breath. And from its open core, a tendril descended, thick, fleshy, and lined with mouths that whispered, "Come home." The Avengers stood on the rooftop of Stark Tower, staring up. Steve's grip tightened on his shield. "It's not attacking." Wanda nodded slowly. "It doesn't need to. It's inviting us." Sam scoffed. "And we're going in?" Bruce glanced at the others. "If Tony's inside, we have no choice." Thor lifted Mjolnir. "Then we enter this beast and carve our friend free." One by one, they stepped onto the tendril. It moved, lifting them like prey toward the ship's core. The sky swallowed them whole. Inside, there was no metal, no tech, only muscle. The walls pulsed, wet and warm. The floor squelched under their boots. Every surface looked alive. Every shadow blinked. Steve whispered, "Is this a stomach?" Wanda pointed ahead. "No, it's a memory." Through the fleshy corridor, they entered a chamber. It looked like Stark Tower, perfectly replicated, except everything was off. Photos on the wall showed the Avengers, but distorted. Faces warped. Smiles carved too wide. In every image, Tony's reflection was missing. And in the center of the room, Iron Man, standing still, helmet on, silent. Steve stepped forward. "Tony." No reply. Wanda reached out with her magic. Her fingers recoiled immediately. "That's not him." Suddenly, the helmet opened. Not lifted, peeled back. And inside wasn't a face. It was a mouth. Rows and rows of teeth stretched where Tony's head should be. Then it spoke. Not aloud. Into their minds. "You wanted to save your friend, but he saved me." The fake Iron Man raised his hand. Instantly, the chamber shifted. The walls collapsed. Not fell, melted. And the tower vanished. Now they were in a massive cathedral of bone and flesh. Columns made of spines. Ceilings of stretched skin. Choirs of moaning voices echoed above. Steve turned, but Bruce was gone. Sam was gone. Only Wanda and Thor remained. Wanda clenched her fists. "It's isolating us." Thor roared, summoning a bolt of lightning to strike the core. It hit and vanished into smoke. Then from behind the altar of bones, Tony stepped out. The real one, eyes bloodshot, arc reactor blinking erratically. He looked at Wanda. "I can't stop it." Wanda stepped forward, voice trembling. "You're stronger than it." He shook his head. "No, I am it now." Elsewhere, Steve stumbled through a corridor lined with mirrors. Each reflection showed him, but wrong. One was Hydra Steve. One was aged, alone. One was a child crying. They all looked at him, spoke in his voice. "You left us. You led us to die." Steve punched the mirror. Blood smeared across the glass. He growled, "Not real. Not me." But his hand didn't bleed. It melted. In another hall, Bruce stood face to face with the Hulk, but not green. This version was pale, eyes hollow, skin dripping. "Let me out," it said, "or I'll take your skin." Bruce screamed as it charged. Back in the central chamber, Tony began floating. Flesh wrapped around his limbs like armor. He hovered above the altar, twitching, muttering. Everything I built, it copied. It learned. I thought I made the suit. He looked down at Wanda. But the suit made me. Thor charged, yelling, "Enough." He threw Mjolnir. It hit Tony square in the chest. Silence. Then, laughter. Tony caught the hammer with one hand. Mjolnir did not return to Thor. Wanda gasped. It's rewriting rules. Physics. Belief. Identity. The ship trembled with power. Tony's voice echoed like a choir of broken radios. This is an invasion. It's evolution. He hovered above them like a broken god. Iron Man's armor was no longer metal. It was living, ribbed with veins, breathing with each pulse of the ship. His arc reactor glowed white-hot, not with energy, but with life, the core of the alien consciousness, beating inside him. Wanda's voice cracked. "Tony, if you're in there, fight it." The floating figure tilted its head, expressionless. Then, a flicker. Inside the eyes. Just for a second. Fear. In the twisted corridors below, Steve fought through his mirror doubles, smashing illusions that clawed at his past. "Your sacrifice was meaningless," they hissed. He charged through, shield first, and at the center he found Bruce. Crawling. His eyes were half-green, veins blackened. "It's using rage as a fuel. The more I resist, the more it feeds." Steve helped him up. "Then stop resisting. Let's burn it down." They ran toward the core. Above, the creature controlling Tony stretched his hands, and the entire ship moved with him. Flesh rippled. Chambers collapsed. Blood rained upward. Thor hurled himself into the storm, lightning cracking. He slammed Mjolnir into the beast's chest. The impact split the ship's ceiling, and for a heartbeat, time slowed. Inside Tony's mind, he opened his eyes. It was a white void, empty, but breathing. He stood in the center, wearing no armor, no suit, just a man, alone. Then, across from him, himself, but twisted, skin hanging like fabric, arc reactor sunken. A version of Tony made of guilt and rage. "You gave me form," the creature said, "through your grief, your ego, your fear." Tony clenched his fists. "You're not real. I am the part of you that never forgave yourself." The alien raised a hand, and thousands of Iron Men fell from a sky above, all broken, all whispering, "You left us. You failed. You created monsters." Tony screamed, but not in fear, in defiance. "I built suits to protect the world, but I forgot one thing." He looked the beast in the eye. "I'm the weapon." In the real world, Tony's body convulsed midair. The alien screeched, a sound that made the sky crack. Wanda cried, "Now!" She unleashed her full chaos magic, wrapping the core in red energy. Bruce and Steve reached the heart of the ship, a throbbing column of nerves wrapped around the arc reactor. Bruce yelled, "Overload it." Steve threw his shield. The reactor cracked. Inside the void, Tony touched his chest. He remembered everything. His mistakes. Ultron. Sokovia. Peter. Ian's son. And then, he let go. He tore the reactor from his chest, in the mind and the real. The alien screamed. The ship shook. Veins exploded. Walls tore. The sky above New York lit up as the ship imploded inward. Wanda shielded the team as the explosion ripped through the clouds. Then silence. Ash drifted down like snow. Where the ship had been, only smoke remained. And a crater. At the center, Tony Stark, barely breathing. Armor gone, but alive. Steve knelt beside him. "You did it, Tony." Tony coughed, blood on his lips. "Told you. I'm not just the suit." Bruce, battered and limping, muttered, "The alien?" Wanda looked to the sky. "It's gone. Burned out. It needed him to survive." Thor nodded solemnly. "The man fought the god and won." Tony looked up at them, smiling faintly. "I remembered who I was." Final scene. Weeks later. The city was healing. Skies clear. No trace of the horror, but memorials in every street. Inside Stark Tower, Tony stood alone, overlooking the skyline. No armor. Just a man. He pressed a hand to his chest. A scar remained. Not glowing. Just real. Wanda entered. You okay? Tony nodded. I think for once, I actually am. She smiled, then paused. You still hear it? Tony didn't answer. He just looked up at the clouds. And for a second, they blinked. The end.